meeting. Before we start doing the slides, we have a friend here, David. I can't pronounce your last name. Going to talk
No, it's
about
not
a
last
thing.
name. It's a company
Hi.
I work for. Hey, some of you guys might remember me. I spoke a couple months ago at one of these meetings about web development. I work for a local startup here in Sacramento. We're starting a kind of a research project, and what happened is a dermatologist that came from UC Davis is actually adjunct professor at Sac State, and he wants to work with us in a project in basically identifying what are called skin lesions, acne, moles, with image recognition and some machine learning. So together with another worker here at DermVeda, a Gage right here, we're putting together a small group where we're going to try to tackle these problems and work closely with this dermatologist. So if you guys are interested, complete volunteer project, go ahead and email me at david@dermveda.com, and then I can talk about details and go from there. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Right.
All right, so just want to plug that the security sake is going on, and last meeting we had a clipboard going around for people that were interested in going to it, and essentially you signed your email. Not get their newsletter, but you're still interested in joining, then you would just email this group right here, or you can contact us and we can redirect you to where you need. For that.
I don't know about
So
so let's talk about it.
Ethical Hacking Workshop is tomorrow here from 6 to 8 p.m. And bring your laptops, bring your laptops, bring your laptops. That's about it. That's all I have for you.
That's all the information you need these days.
So we're having a game jam, woohoo! On March 4th. That's the day after GDC. For those of you who've heard us talking about GDC, it's gonna go from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. It's gonna be in this room. More information. We have more information. Oh yeah, we're gonna have dinner. Will likely be pizza. We're thinking pizza. Around likely pizza. And we can't install game development software on these computers, so anything that you will need that the school can't provide, you're going to have to bring yourself. So if you want to use Unity, bring a laptop or a desktop and plug it into the wall and jack one of the monitors. But bring your own hardware in general.
So if you have never made a game before and you really want to come here and try and start one, I'm going to be starting a new project to help people get started with Unity. And essentially all you do is download the free version of Unity, and if you come there, we'll have a workshop for you guys to work off of, and should be able to help you get going.
Download Unity ahead of time. It takes a long time. It's a stupidly big program. I believe that's this slide. GDC. Oh, we probably should have put this one first. Set forms due by February 22nd. That is today. So if you're still trying to go to GDC and you want to put your forms in with our forms, we want those forms by today, and then we're going to go and get them signed by Gordon and submit to the SAD office. Do not be discouraged by this if you still want to go. You can still put in the SAD forms on your own, but you'll need to track down a professor, probably Gordon, to sign them for you and then put the forms in. It's still possible. It's just more effort. And effort's hard. For transportation, for those of you who still want to fill out the forms, I believe that we have a number of people going by Megabus. I don't believe I've heard anybody talk about carpools, so I believe Megabus is the current popular option. I know I'm going by Megabus. The information for Megabus is there on the slides. We should probably post the slides.
Yeah. If you have any questions about what we're planning to do with that, or anything in general about GDC or the Game Jam, or basically anything we've listed here, feel free to come and talk to us.
Oh, update on the stay of the night, by the way. It is no longer untested. Tanvir put in the money for staying the night, and he did not get enough money to fully stay the night at San Francisco. So don't try that. You won't get enough money. You'll get half the money you need. Yeah.
I think that's about it.
Yeah, that's about it.
Anything else?
Tech Talk. Now we welcome Andrew Meyer up to talk about
Please welcome Andrew Meyer. He's going to be talking about game development
Not game development.
Not game development. Web development. We can believe.
Just laptop. I'm going to attach this to you. I'm going to attach this to you.
Oh, so now I'm uncomfortable.
Don't worry, you're fine.
No, just hold on to it.
Yeah. It is displaying. Oh, it's 720, right? It's all right. So hi, I'm Andrew Meyer. First of all, I am by no means a professional web dev, so don't judge me too harshly. Like it's a side thing I do. I work at Aerojet as a systems programmer, but this is just something that, like, I wanted to give this talk because there's no web dev at all in undergrad or in grad really, and that's kind of a shame because that's a huge part of what we would likely be hired to do after graduation in some form or another, either web services or some API or systems programming for web companies and so on. So it just, I wanted to give this talk to just say, hey, this is a thing you do. And if you take 131 or senior project, depending on the project, you are very likely to end up having to do some sort of web dev type thing. And because you're not prepared for it beforehand, you just kind of have to like jump in and hope for the best. So I wanted to give a talk on the LAMP stack, which is a specific thing to web dev. So what is a stack? It's just a set of subsystems that, when put together, kind of develop a runtime environment. So think like the Java runtime environment. For web-based solutions, the LAMP stack would be one. Typically, it's like an operating system, a web server, some way of just storing data, because you have to store your data for a website, and then some language or group of languages that you're using the code in for this stack. The LAMP stack specifically is Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP originally. Nowadays, it's a whole, like, the acronym is kind of just muddled by all the different plug and plays of different solutions. But Linux, it's that general open source operating system that you have all known and love. Apache is the most widely used HTTP server in the world. It's also open source. MySQL, one of the first GNU open source SQL relational database management systems. And then PHP, which is kind of a recursive acronym. It's PHP stands for PHP Hypertext Processor. But you can think of it as just like pre-HTML processing, which I'll explain that a little later. But like I said, nowadays there's like WAMP, which is for a sample I'm going to show you later. It stands for Windows instead of Linux, and then everything else is the same. Sometimes the P is replaced with like Perl or Python or whatever, and you just swap out the acronym letters. But the point is the LAMP stack, like the actual like acronym, is super dense because like it's an acronym of acronyms, right? Like MySQL is an acronym, PHP is an acronym. Within PHP, their HTML is an acronym, and so on. So it's like this branching tree of things. And the other important point is this is all open source. You're freely allowed to use it whenever you want, wherever you want, kind of however you want. You can't sell it. That's part of the GNU licensing. But yeah, it's all open source. So you can just download it today and play around with it. These are a couple small mom-and-pop type groups that have used it over the years. Granted, very large websites like Google or Facebook and whatnot, they use a whole host of architectures and solutions and stuff. So by no means is all of Facebook run on LAMP, but like parts of it are run on LAMP. The original code for it was in the LAMP architecture, and so on. But yeah, this is a very small list. This is by no means exhaustive. So kind of a high-level breakdown, and this is going to be a lot of hand-waving initially. But basically, usually what you see is you have your web browser, so your client side, like you on your laptop. You make a page request when you click on a link to a page, or you just type it into the web URL and whatnot, and you click enter, and you send that request off to your server. Now the server has So this will be on a machine that is running Linux or Windows or whatever. You're going to have your PHP code request. When you type in that URL, what you are doing is you're requesting a file that is on that server, and that file is likely to be PHP in the LAMP stack. Now, in that file, you're going to have a bunch of PHP code. You'll have JavaScript code and HTML code and whatnot too, or you'll have files linking within files and whatnot. Basically, you're requesting this page of code. The server understands that and executes the code. So, in static websites, when you make a request to a server for an HTML file, it just sends you back that HTML file. There's no processing going on. There's no real rendering or anything. With this, you're pre-computing what the HTML should look like. So when you make this request, the PHP executor, what it does is it takes the PHP file, interprets it based on certain things that you have sent it, and then it spits back just a HTML file of that output. So it's rendering the PHP. And I'll explain what that kind of looks like a little later. Your database, when the PHP code is called, if you have queries referencing to a database, this is where that is interpreted. You call it to your database. It says, oh, well, execute this query, grab these things, send it back. Usually it's a large group of databases. A lot of the time you're using your database as just a pointer list to a file system where you grab things like if you have images, you're not going to store large images in your database. You're going to store the file location to that image in your database and some metadata. So it'll go and grab that. It'll send it back to your executor. It'll render that page, and then the user will see it on the web browser. And yeah, so that's very hand wavy though. This isn't like, this is exactly how you implement LAMP. So this is what I'm trying to avoid, to just draw some circles and draw the owl. But the LAMP is like I said, acronyms within acronyms, frameworks on architectures on frameworks. And I'm not here to really give a talk on like how those frameworks work, or like the low level code understanding, like the machine level understanding of why these systems work on top of each other. What I wanted to do was more give a talk on the actual application, like the implementation of a LAMP stack. Because ultimately, like, at least that's what I tend to care about, is like, okay, this system's cool, but like, how do I use it? How do I make something of it? And that's what this talk is about. So without further ado, let's do Hello World. Now this is immediately like a real aggressive use of the LAMP stack. It's just an HTML document. I mean, this is all just scaffolding. Really, it's just printing Hello World, so it's not all that interesting. If I wanted to get some PHP in here, wait, first of all, have any of you ever touched anything in web dev? I should have probably opened with that. So HTML is like understood. To those who don't understand it, I'm defining the doc type, opening and closing my HTML tag, so everything in it is HTML. Header, this is just something that won't be seen by the user. I actually cropped it off, but the name of the tab will be example because of the title. And then body, so this is what you're seeing there, Hello World. So everything in here you'll see. So if you wanted to put PHP into this, all you have to do is, like with JavaScript, for those of you who have used or who have done anything in web dev, usually just define like a script tag and a close script tag, and then everything in it is some sort of script. It's the same thing with PHP. You just define your PHP open and close, and everything in it is PHP. Now, what's cool about this is what you're seeing here is PHP just saying, hey, echo this string. But what's being rendered there, if I were to go into the source, if I were on this web page and I clicked, view source, you won't see this at all. This is totally invisible to the user. And what they'll see is just, hi, I'm a PHP script. They won't see this part right here. The reason why is because the PHP processor is taking this file and saying, all right, well, how do I render this as HTML? It renders it that way, and then it spits out that file. And that's what the user sees. And that's pretty much it for PHP. But that's still not all that interesting. I mean, all I'm doing is printing a string. What I want to do is I want to be able to actually use the LAMP stack itself. So how many of you have used databases before? SQL? Any derivative of them? Okay, cool. So I'll explain this line in a second. This is me just saying, hey, make a connection with my database, but it's in a different file. This is your query. Just I'm selecting this column from this table. No magic. My response is this. This variable is part of this line, which once again I'll explain in a second. The query is just the query that I made it. The query is just a string saying, hey, if I were writing SQL right now, this is what it would look like. And then I'm storing that in an array. Response is an array. Now, if I receive a response from the web server, I'm going to make a loop, and I'm going to say for every response or for every element in that array in the response, I'm going to run this loop. In this instance, there's only one thing in my table right now, so it's once again not all that interesting initially. But basically, just run for every element in the array. My text equals what that element in this particular column is. So my input, that's the column I'm calling. If I had a table with 10 columns in it, this is how you would specify like which column in that response you would want. And then echo that output, and then the hi on my PHP script again. That's what you see there. Also, I'm not really like expecting anyone to like memorize the code or like instantly understand what's going on, but I'm just trying to show like how little code is required to actually implement the entire stack. But important takeaways here is, one, you can call to a database, which is super cool to me because you're not gonna, when you're making a website, you're not gonna hard store everything that you want to display to a user on the web page. You have to put it in a database somewhere. Wait, if you go on Facebook or YouTube, like when you click the view page source, you're not like that page isn't hard coded. It's a framework for that page, and then it calls out to a database and retrieves a bunch of data for that page request, and then renders it. And that's what you're doing here. This is an actual example of a dynamic web page now. And then the other important takeaway is this right here. Inside of the string, you can type HTML out. Like this is a break line, and it renders the break line. It doesn't print break line, and that's super useful. And I'll show why in a second. And so this require once thing, the reason why, so what that does is it calls to a file, not this file. It calls to a different PHP file, and the reason why it does that is because you're making your database connection with it, and mostly it's just this line right here. You don't want to show your password in a page that's accessible in your domain. So in here, I'm saying ... go back one hierarchy. So I'm hopping out of my domain and then calling a PHP script. And then that's where you have your login credentials for your database. This is the way MySQL does it. So here's my DB user, here's my password, the host that I'm on just a local host. So my web server is on the same system as my database. And then, DB name, Collabor, just something. And then I'm just passing that and then saying if it doesn't connect, die, otherwise store it in this variable, which is the variable you saw in the query in the DBC value. But anyways, that's just kind of a tertiary thing for now. Now, you can kind of ignore that. That's just styling. It's just CSS. It's just saying, hey, take this element, color it this way, make it this wide, make it this tall, put it here, so on. That's not the important part. The important part is this. So this is actually weaving HTML and PHP in and out of each other. So let me just show you like the output of it before I like explain this. So this would be like a feed. Like in Facebook, you know how like when you click on home and then you see like some stories, and if you scroll down you see more and more stories. What it's doing is it's making a request to a database, and it's saying, hey, I need these things. Okay, they've scrolled to the bottom, now I need these things, and they scroll to the bottom, I need these things, and it builds up your feed. This is a feed. This is several things stored in my database, and it's displaying that. And I didn't hard code these things. If you look back here, none of those words appear anywhere in here because they're all in my database, and all I'm doing is I'm calling to the database and saying, hey, grab these things. And then the styling. So I'm making boxes, and I'm centering the script and all that. CSS is not actually all that fun, in my opinion, because it takes that amount of stuff to just say, hey, make a square and put text in it. So it's not all that friendly. There's a lot of like prepackaged CSS type sheets that you can use in your website, so you just call them. Anyways, so this block is the exact same as previously. I now have more things in my database. I don't just have hello world. I have a couple of elements in there. Same. All of this is the same. I'm saying, hey, if there's no response, just forget all of this. Otherwise, iterate through the responses. Grab the my input column from that table that I'm getting, and then now what I'm doing is I'm echoing some HTML as a string, and I'm closing that, and I'm saying, hey, put the text inside of this element. So a div is a way of dividing up things within a web page, and you can style the div to make them like boxes, or if you want to make it a circle, if you wanted to make it, a dancing, stick figure or whatever. There's plenty of CSS that can do that. And then I'm grabbing whatever I heard back from my database and I'm putting it in one of those boxes. And that's the cool thing. So this loops, this generates HTML. This generates this line as many times as there are responses, and that's what you're seeing here, where it executes that code, it makes a box, and it stores something that I received from the database in that box, and says, all right, is there anything else? Yes, there is. All right, make another box, put it in there. Is there anything else? Yes, make another box, put something in there. And this is how like the vast majority of websites work. Like this, right? I mean, it's incredibly powerful. You think of like YouTube when you're just scrolling through pages, or Google Images, or you're on Facebook, or MySpace, or Tumblr, or Reddit, or whatever. This is the meat and potatoes of how web server or like user interfaces work on the internet. Is I'm making a request to a server. I want to see some content. That content is grabbed dynamically, put into a web page, and then shown to me. The reason why this is dynamic is because server side, it's receiving inputs, and then the framework for that web page. Like this would be considered like a framework for a web page. It's not like a web page, because the user, if the user goes to that web page and clicks view source, they won't see any of this. This is all hidden. They'll see, in fact, I can show you here in a second. They will just see the raw HTML output of what this PHP is doing. So once you're viewing a web page, it's not dynamic because it's server-side dynamic. If you wanted it to be client-side dynamic, you'd be using something like jQuery or Ajax and whatnot. But that's a totally different talk. And actually, this is my last slide because I ran into like a huge amount of work at work this week. But one thing I did want to show was a demo real quick. First, what I can do. That's because my server is what? What about PHP? Oh, I don't have it. Whatever. So not a demo of the original thing, but actually this would be like a standard website that you would see, right? Like you have content on here. You can click it. So I didn't talk about like all of the things that you can do with LAMP, but like one of the things you can do is page generation. So like I never hard coded this page. I have this object stored in my database that I'm calling to, and then I pass this page some variables referencing that database. Well, really, it's not even an object. It's a pointer to a file system that has this file in it, and it generates the page. And if you go on a website like DeviantArt, for example, if you click on one of those images, you go to a page and you see that output. That's what you're seeing here. You're seeing a page that's been generated based on what the input was, and the input was the original file that you clicked on a higher page. You can even I didn't show how to do it in this, but you could even make a post if you want to, like, do this and then like choose a file. And once again, I didn't show how to store files, but it's all the same thing. You do this in the same way. There's just a little extra code added. You submit that image, and now this image appears, and then this page has been generated involving this image, and like you can like it, and if you refresh the page, and there's a like, although it's really tiny. I have like an actual functioning demo of this on my computer at home, but I couldn't get remote desktop to work last night, so I actually spent about half an hour last night resetting up the entire LAMP stack on this computer, and then rebuilding some stuff. But like, there's a lot of stuff out of place now. But that's what's really cool in my mind is this open source software, which is totally free. You can set up in half an hour and just start coding in it, and you can start making websites. Like it is actually brain dead easy. The actual coding may be a little more difficult, and that's something you have to learn over time. But like the setup, you go to like I forget what website I used, but I just used some mirror website, downloaded WAMP, everything was like pre-installed, pre-configured, and everything. I didn't have to touch anything within the Windows operating system. I didn't have to touch anything within Apache. I can just immediately start writing PHP code and JavaScript code and HTML and whatever, and I can do all this. And I mean, this is how you see a lot of websites run today. So, yeah. Are there any questions or? I'm kind of hoping to maybe get a web dev group together at some point, which would be super cool because, like I said earlier, there's no one who touches web dev here as far as the faculty, and it kind of sucks. I graduated last year. I'm a grad student here now, but like I graduated undergrad last year, and I never touched web dev. And then over last fall, I don't even know what triggered it, but I just like started looking at web dev, and then I started like learning it myself because the school never taught it to me. I thought it was fascinating, and I think it would be really cool to get a group together to just discuss web dev topics or whatever, like the game group or the big data group. And it'd kind of be for you guys, because if you've taken 131 or haven't taken it yet, you are very likely to be doing a web dev or web service type project. If you're doing senior project, easily more than half of them involve web dev, and because they're never taught here, you have to just learn them on your own. And I think it would be cool if there was like a club that got together, or just an interest group within ACM that got together to talk about web dev topics. And LAMP is just one architecture. There's Mean, and there's Ruby on Rails, which is what I use for my senior project. There's a whole bunch of I mean, this web dev is huge. I mean, like, I don't even know how to sum it up in just a sentence. It's probably the biggest subdomain of computer science that I can think of, in all honesty. And that's mostly just because there are so many different architectures and words to know and definitions and languages and stuff in this versus other domains that might be why the school doesn't touch it. It also might be because the school is kind of a dinosaur. So anyways, if anyone's interested in that, you talk to me afterwards. I'm trying to get that group together. Are there any questions about LAMP in particular? No? Okay, cool.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the school doesn't really do much about web development stuff. And I just got a 131 last semester, and I did run into this problem where you have to learn how to do all the web development aspects of a project by yourself. And I agree, we probably have something like that somewhere in the school. But that's the end of the meeting today. Thank you guys for coming. If you have any questions about just anything we brought up, feel free to come talk to us. Am I forgetting any words or any words?
These are we talking about or no? Are we talking about that?
We can talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about that. So CTC ran over here in the middle of the meeting and gave me these.
Just grab my stuff real quick. Oh. There we go.
So Computer Technology Club is another club on campus, new as of last semester. They focus on like sort of IT help, things like that. Although they've been doing like some more hands-on putting stuff together on like breadboards and stuff. But the focus of their club is to sort of like get people to learn how to not be stupid with computers, basically. And they're doing a fundraiser next week on Tuesday with Panda on campus. So they wanted us to hand out these flyers to people to let them know when and where. If you want more information about CTC, they're not on the flyers, sadly. I forgot to ask them to put them on there. But they meet. They meet
Second floor?
second floor on Thursdays at 7 o'clock.
We should get more specifics on that.
Yeah, I believe it's in 2010.
Yeah, it does.
Yes.
Or it should be
It's
in
really small rating. And they're sort of cool club. They're small, so they don't do as much like stuff that they. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, that's the thing. If anybody wants to know about their fundraiser, you can get a flyer at the front here. Thank you for coming to our meeting this week.
Thank you.
Try
If you have any
touch this.
GDC forms, feel free to bring them up here. We have a folder for them.
Next Friday. It is next Friday, and we're going in the morning. Well, I'm going in the morning, coming back the day of.